right, I should be live.
Right now, I'm not working at that side family. I saw this and I thought, well, I'm just gonna go.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
No.
No?
We turn it up a little bit?
Nobody, I'm just.
Can you, is it coming out of the back or no?
Doesn't sound like it.
No?
Hello?
Hello, hello, the sound?
I'm doing good.
Can you guys hear me?
A little better.
Okay, Rich, you all can talk very loud. Slow, fast, slow, fast. Well, I'm not gonna talk a whole lot, because I know you guys all know Richard, and you're all here to learn, if you're not German, not Polish, but Pomeranian. But I do have to mention that Richard came to me last week and said, "Where's your overflow room?" And I said, "What? We don't have an overflow room. Why would we need an overflow room?" This is why we need an overflow room. We are so excited to have you here. So looking forward to it. We will, if people are trying to come in, we're going to have a laptop upstairs running this live. It's on Facebook Live, so hopefully you're on your Facebook feed if you're at home. And oh, I can't talk about Pomerania. Don't run away.
So you want to help Renee upstairs with the computer. Thank you.
All right, without further ado, Richard Kilmer.
Okay, let me know if you can hear me, but I'll try to speak loud. Welcome, everyone. Many of you know me, and probably many of you are related to me. My name is Richard Kilmer. I grew up in Wonewoc. I'm 1/4 Pomeranian, 1/4 Bohemian, 1/4 Bavarian, and 1/4 Yankee. So I got involved with this because I took care of my aunt and uncle. My dad's up a little more.
Yeah, can you guys
More?
hear that? Can you hear that
I
better?
can get it closer.
That's good.
Okay. I took care of my aunt and uncle. My grandpa's first family was killed in a flash flood. And then he moved to Wonewoc to test milk and met this young Pomeranian woman, Emma Paulina Ottilia Pinsky. And so he married her and had 2 children, my dad, Roy Kilmer, and my uncle, if you know, Buzz Kilmer, who goes to Buzz in town. So the family goes back quite a ways in Wonewoc. But my aunt came here. She was the surviving child of the flood. After my grandpa married, she moved to Wonewoc, and she became the stepchild in a Pomeranian house. So I took care of my aunt and uncle until they died. So I heard many, many stories about Pomeranians and about people in Wonewoc, the history of Wonewoc. My aunt didn't always have nice things to say about the Pomeranians because she was a stepchild, and she felt the other kids were liked better because they were Pomeranians. But she ended up running away from home and marrying a Pomeranian. So I mean, she did not like them that much. So my uncle was 100% Pomeranian. And so he had plenty of stories too. So between the 2 of them...
Is that too dark, Richard?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Between the 2 of them, I've heard lots of stories. And I heard about all these people in Wonewoc. I never knew how we were related to them. But it's like, oh, we played cards with these people and, you know, all these family names. And then when I started doing genealogy, I'm like, oh my God, they're cousins. That's how my grandpa and grandpa played cards with them. You know, all of these people are related somehow. So I found out that out of my class of 64, I'm related to 28 of the kids in the class. So that kind of got me started, and people get a little tired of hearing me talk about genealogy sometimes. But Kim asked me to do a presentation on Pomerania. And I found that most people don't even know where Pomerania is. All they think about is the Pomeranian dog. There's also Pomeranian goose, and there's the Pomeranian sheep. So go to the next slide. Pomerania was actually a Slavic country to start with, and then the Germans started moving in the middle of the Middle Ages. And they had it was called the Eastern Settlement. So Germans kept moving east towards Russia. The Napoleonic Wars came along. Pomerania was its own country. It used to be connected to Poland, but Poland broke up. Pomerania became its own country. It was pretty much run by the Dukes of Pomerania. The wealthy people owned most of the land. Unfortunately, our families are the ones that work for them. After the Napoleonic Wars, Prussia fought against France. Prussia won. Prussia took over a huge part of Eastern Europe, and Pomerania was one of them. At the end of World War II, Pomerania was dissolved. It was no more. But before that, many of the people had immigrated from Pomerania to the United States. Millions of German speakers came to the United States. Wisconsin was one of the more popular spots. For some reason, maybe it looked like Germany, but a lot of Germans came here. You can go to the next slide. So this is where Pomerania was. The orange, it's on the Baltic Sea. It means by the sea in Polish. Germany to the left, Poland south. At the end of the war, you see that line that goes up there?
That's on your next.
Right here, this is how they divided Pomerania. The Russians took over the east. Germany took over a little portion to the west. Go to the next slide. You might hear your family is from Prussia. Anything that's green was Prussia. You see Pomerania, Prussia. All the way over into Russia, down into Austria. So this whole huge area of Europe was Prussia, up until 1871, and then Germany united. And this all became one country. The problem is, this part of Germany, Catholic. This part of Germany, Lutheran. So, I don't know if the Pomeranians, I'm not always sure why they moved here, probably because they were poor, plus there was land here. And we were advertising that there was land in Wisconsin. So people were leaving, people were writing to the relatives, but a huge percentage, I think 2% of the Pomeranian population moved to the United States, and most of them moved to Wisconsin. The other group that came here was from Hanover. So I would say a quarter of the people who came to Wonewoc were from Hanover, and a quarter came from Pomerania, and the other quarter were Irish, Bohemian, Bavarians, and then there was also a big group of Yankees that came to Wonewoc. They were the first settlers. They're the ones that took over the land. They're the ones that pretty much sold the land to the Pomeranians, the English did here. So go to the next slide. So this was Pomerania. It was made up of 3 states. Posen, West Prussia, Kostlin, and Stettin. Stettin was also the capital. Our families, not all of them, but a huge percentage are from this little circle right in here. Some are from Woolen, Kamen, Nogard, Pirates, Satzig, Gramberg, Stettin, Arnswald, and Belgard. Pretty much this area here, pretty much concentrated, in this area. You see that's 50 kilometers. Within a 50-kilometer radius, most of those families in Wonewoc came from that area. And they were Pomeranian. When they came here, they called themselves Pomeranian. Then they started calling themselves Prussian, because it was Prussia. Then, eventually, everybody said, oh, we're just German. Well, they're technically not German. They speak a different language. They speak Low German, or Danzig German, I think it's called. It's pretty hard for people who speak regular German to understand people who speak Low German. It's quite a different dialect, uses totally different words. Next slide. So, World War II came along. The Russians came and took over all of this. All of these All of these German speakers here had to flee. And this is where they drew the line, right here. The Russians took this side, the Germans took this side. Germany was divided by the French, the English, and the Americans. There really wasn't a Germany at that time. All these people are fleeing, trying to get over to where the Americans are, or the British are. The Russians wanted the capital, 400,000 people. 400,000 people in that town had to leave. Some of them had to leave overnight, but within a year they were all gone. You can go to the next slide. If you learn anything else from this lecture tonight, is your family is not from Pommern, Koch, and Zell. Almost every genealogy you look at online, people type in the word Pomerania, and this is what comes up with the computer. It's a computer, it's artificial intelligence. Koch and Zell is way over here. Nothing to do with Pomerania. But I would say half the genealogies say their family is from here, but they're not. So remember, you're from Pomerania, not Koch and Zell. This is over by Belgium, not even close. It's a different German. Go to the next slide. This is a postcard from one of my family's hometowns in Pomerania. This is in the 1800s. See, it looks quite a bit like Wisconsin. So go to the next slide. There's a pretty big group that's from this part of Pomerania. I found this picture of the traditional dress. I don't know if that's true, but it's pretty colorful. I don't think our relatives were that colorful, but this is where the cowpox and the wolves and the pagels are from, this county. Go to the next slide. This is probably what our relatives looked like when they came over here. I don't have any pictures of them traveling, but they usually came as a family group. The next slide, please. So it was a real process for them to come to Wisconsin. They had to leave their little village. They had to get somehow to the ports of Bremen or Hamburg, which are way to the western part of Germany. They did have trains then, so when most people came, so they probably took a train. They got to the ports. They waited for the ships. Like I said, millions of Germans left through those two ports. So they were taken advantage of. They were robbed. I mean, it was not an easy. They probably didn't read or write. They got here. The cities did set up places for these people to get on the ships. So they did help because these people needed protection because they were so vulnerable. So they get there. Then they got to take a ship across to New York or Baltimore. Then they have to take a train from there to the Midwest. And then before the train came to Wonewoc, they probably walked to Wonewoc. Took 7 to 10 days to cross the ocean because in the 1870s they had steamships, which really helped. But next slide. But they were in steerage and it was pretty awful. The conditions were very bad. Lots of disease, cholera. Quite a few people died on the way. It cost between $10 and $30 to get across, which was a lot of money back then. 1,500 people on a ship in the bottom of these ships, all crowded together. Before they had to provide their own food, but as they got longer and longer, the ships did provide food for the people on the ship. Next slide. So they advertised over there. Land speculators had bought up the land here, a lot of the land around Wonewoc. They were advertising it to people in Pomerania. This is $24 for a steamship ride from Bremen to New York. Next, this is from Michigan. The train didn't come until 1872, if I'm right, Darrell. And before 1872, they had to either come with a horse and wagon or walk. Next slide. This is 1879 Wonewoc. Pretty much the beginning of it. They wanted these immigrants to come here because first they wanted to sell them land, and they wanted population. They wanted people here. So like I said, in the 1860s, the Hanoverians came. They were a different type of German. They spoke High German, and of course I always heard that they were wealthier, and a little, well, there was definitely a class difference. The Pomeranians were the poor people. Next slide. So this is what happened to Pomerania at the end of World War II. 1945, the late winter, the Russians were coming, and people freaked out. The Russians are coming, they're going to kill you, and that's what they did. So everybody tried to flee if they could. This is what the towns look like. This is people starting to flee. The next slide. They had one day to leave. They could, whatever they could carry. So these are our cousins. I mean, this is 40, 60 years after our relatives had left. So these would be probably first and second cousins fleeing for their lives. 25 million German speakers fled from the east to the west, to the American occupied or the British occupied. 25% of them died of exposure. So millions of people starved to death. If the Russians caught them, they were sent to Siberia to work to death in slave camps. So millions and millions of them died. Next slide. The German troops went against orders and tried to save people with the Russians coming. They set up ships on the Baltic Sea. Of course, they took the wealthy and they took the soldiers if they could. But a lot of peasants left too. You can see they left their goats, their carts, got on the ships. The Russians bombed the ships. They bombed the ports. They, ships with thousands of people on them went down in the Baltic with Russian bombs. People walked across the frozen rivers with their carts. Many of them fell through. They walked across the frozen bay of the Baltic Sea to try to get to the ships. It was utter chaos and utter genocide. It was amazing how many people died. Go to the next slide. So this is what happened to Pomerania after the Russians took over and it became Poland. There were a lot of estates, and this is from Dorothy's pictures. This is what happened to the estates. This is where probably most of our relatives worked on these estates, owned by the rich dukes of Pomerania. But some of them became communes under communism, but a lot of them went to disrepair. Go to the next slide. This is where the roll-offs are from. This is the only building left in that town. A lot of these towns our families came from were just crossroads, or they were just farms. Jacobsdorf was basically a farm that the roll-offs worked on. But this is the only building left there when Dorothy was there. And what year were you there?
13 was the first time.
2013. Next slide. So they got to Wisconsin. They were very religious, and that was part of the reason they came here too. There was some religious problems going on, teaching in schools, things like that. Germany became a unified country. They were persecuting some of the Lutheran ministers, and they fled to Pomerania, and then they fled from Pomerania to Wisconsin, and they're sending for people to come over here. And then also people who have come here originally are sending for people to come over here. So it became kind of a mass migration. This is the Summit Church. I think it's on the race farm. Church doesn't exist anymore, but all these people are Pomeranians. This is probably 1880, something like that. Next slide. The other big Pomeranian church was at Big Creek by Lake Redstone, the north side of Lake Redstone. This is the first church they built. I have lots of aunts and uncles in this picture, so I think almost everyone in this picture is Pomeranian. This is the minister there. Then they built a new church in 1907. The church that's there. Every family had to haul 8 loads of bricks from the brickyard of Wonewoc up to the church up in Big Creek. So that was their tithe, to haul 8 loads of bricks. So they built this. A lot of them built, they helped build it. So, go on to the next slide. This is a Pomeranian wedding, 1800. This would be my grandma right here, Emma Pinsky. Her mother was Amelia Krieger, which was right here. This was I think this is Tante Reineke, and this is Willie Krieger, Bertha Radke. This is old man Radke. He looks quite Pomeranian. My great-grandfather wouldn't be in the picture because he didn't believe in pictures, so unfortunately I don't have any pictures of him. Next slide. If you want to see a Pomeranian, what a Pomeranian farm looks like, there's a great one at Old World, Wisconsin. They just picked up the whole farm from the 1860s and moved it to Old World, Wisconsin, and it's just really, really cool place to see. Go to the next slide. This is the roll-off Stricker wedding. I don't know if it was in Watertown or if it was in Summit, because she was from near Watertown. A lot of people stopped in Watertown on the way because there was a low German population there, and they had a Plattdeutscher, meeting house and everything. So there's a big connection to Watertown, people coming up to this area. But this is probably 1898. See their log cabin still. Next slide. This, in early 1900s, they're getting more wealthy. This is Willie Krieger and Bertha Radke. They have quite a nice house already, so they are making money here. They are improving their lives, going from really peasants to having some pretty prosperous farms. Go to the next slide. This is my great-grandfather, my grandmother. He was the blacksmith in Wonewoc. He was from Pomerania, born in Pomerania. They settled in Car Valley first, and then he moved to Wonewoc, who was the blacksmith here. I had this picture colorized, and it actually came up pretty well. It was almost, you could almost not see it when I had it. Go to the next slide. This is his blacksmith shop in Wonewoc. It stands where the War Memorial is next to the American Legion there. Empty spot that was, it used to be the Chevrolet Garage's showroom. Next slide. So I was going to show you a little bit on how to figure out if you're Pomeranian first, and then how to find out where your family is from. The sad thing is, the Pomeranians are probably, of all the genealogies I've done, and I've done a lot, Pomeranians are the hardest because the towns no longer exist, and the records, most of the records no longer exist. The Russians pretty much burned everything. The churches were turned to Catholic churches. They threw the records away. Dorothy will talk a little bit about Dorothy Demansky-Baxhorn was over there, and she can explain what she saw there. But trying to figure out if you're Pomeranian, the longer they lived here, the more German they became. So then everything just said German, German, German. Oh, I'm German, I'm German. Well, technically, a quarter of the people were Pomeranian, a quarter were from Hanover. And that's a whole different group of people. And I'm going to have Cheryl Thornton Schwarzenbach talk about that sometime, because they were definitely two classes of people. But they started intermarrying almost immediately. The church in Wonewoc was more Pomeranian, more Hanoverian church. Definitely a wealthier church. Go to the next slide. So, started out, this is the things I would find. This is the Rao family. They were from Honey Creek. But they, in 1944, somebody wrote this little family history up. This is how the family histories used to be written. Very brief. They said where they were born. No matter where I look, I cannot find that. And you think they've got the town, they've got the province, they've got Posen, which was part of Pomerania. I can't find that town. But she moved to Wonewoc and married my great-grandfather, whose wife died in childbirth. She had 7 Polinsky kids. It was very common for there to be 2 or 3 families, because wives often would die in childbirth, or the husband would die in a farming accident. These families would all combine, and then it would get kind of confusing. Who's who? Who's father? Who's? But go to the next slide. But you have people like Mr. Race, who wrote his history in 1920, and he even says his town and his county that really is very, very helpful. So they wrote a book, next slide, and they used a lot of his things. I have a copy to look back there if you want to see it. That's a good way to find, some people have already done the work, so you don't have to do a lot, but the races have a really nice history book. So, the next slide. Or, like the Folks family, this is what they did before they had computers. It was a family group sheet, very nice. They also listed the town and the county of both of the parents, so that really helps you find what you're looking for. They listed all the kids. Go to the next slide. The Big Creek Church, the minister was very nice. He wrote a page for every family, and look at, he put where they're from, Boco, Pomerania. Even, I just noticed this here, Mrs. Procknell, or Mrs. Krieger was a Procknell, and he even listed her town, Ellsbrook, Pomerania. So, unfortunately, he didn't list Bertha Radke's hometown, because she was born in Pomerania, but unfortunately, I can't find the Radke's hometown. Go to the next slide. We go to the ship records. They are almost impossible to read. This here is my great-great-grandfather, August Krieger. He's 34. He's a wheelwright. His wife, Christina, she was a Gates. Henrietta is a little old to be their daughter. She's 20. Well, guess what? August's sister was Henrietta, and so that's his younger sister who's coming along with him. She married Fred Railing. Then there's Frederick, the oldest boy. Augusta, she married a Reineke. Amelia, that's my great-grandmother. And so it doesn't give you a lot of information. It just says they're from Germany. The ship records as it got this was 1868, 1875. They didn't have a lot of information on those ship records. The two ports, one was Hamburg, one was Bremen. They both kept records of everybody's hometowns. Unfortunately, Bremen said we don't have room, so they just burned all the records. But Hamburg did keep the records. Unfortunately, most of our families came through Bremen, so those records were destroyed. Go to the next slide. Naturalization records were really a great way to find the town. The problem is most people just, to vote and to buy land, you had to become naturalized. You just needed to file an intent. All you did was you said you denounced the King of Prussia. It doesn't say where you're from. But if you finish the process, it'll say here that he is from Boco, and he said Germany, but we know it's Pomerania. So it lists his kids, his wife, lots of information. These records are, unfortunately, up in Stevens Point. I don't know why. They used to be in Boston, for Juneau County. Go to the next slide. The really good records are these ministers who fill these out for the weddings. This was a Christ Leverance wedding. And they listed all of their names, all three of their names. People had three names. And I'm sure there is some system to those names. Probably one is named after the grandmother, one is named after their godparent, one is named after an uncle. But everybody had three names, and this minister wrote out all her names, and they wrote out the parents. And luckily, they wrote out where they were born, Kortenheim, Pomerania. And that's where he was from, and she's from Rehberg. Wallen, which is an island on the northern river. So these can be really, really helpful to find those. You go to the next slide. You go to the censuses, but they don't have a lot of information. I cut out the top of this, but this would be like the Preptos here. This is in Sauk County, Laval, had a huge population of Pomeranians, township of Laval. But it only says they're from Germany. But it will say that she had I think, this tells you how many children she's had and how many are alive. So there's quite a bit of information. It tells if they own their land. So you kind of combine all of these things, and you can kind of piece together how these families came here, how they spread out. Go to the next slide. The Wonewoc Reporter had some really nice obituaries. This is Mrs. Luke's obituary. She was a roll-off. And you can see she put her town, Klaushagen, Kreis-Regenwald, Pomerania. Unfortunately, she spelled it phonetically. That's not how you spell Klaushagen, but you get the idea. You can kind of figure out where they're from. So they wrote really nice obituaries, but not all. A lot of them just said born in Germany. Not very helpful when you're looking for where your family is from. All of these obituaries are alphabetized, and they're over in the next room across the hall. Just ask the librarian, and you can go in there. There'll be a file for the Lukes. There'll be a file for the roll-offs. There'll be a file for the Pagels. All the obituaries that Mary Waits could find, she copied and put in those files. So every family has a file. And those are in the next room over there, and you can use this anytime the library is open. The next slide. Okay, I did hand out a list of resources. Some of these are really helpful. When I first started doing this research, and probably when Dorothy started doing this, there was so little information out there about Pomerania because the country had been destroyed. But as people are finding out more information, they're putting more information online. Some of the church records actually were saved in some of the towns. Unfortunately, the towns I was looking for, no. But there are some church records. I think Sarah Bashi, her grandma was a Degner. Her mom was a Pig. Her grandma was a Degner. She wrote this book on the Degner history. And she went over there, and she was actually able to find church records. So, but Mr. Otto, his sister married Fred Ott, or his aunt married Fred Ott. He went over there in the, 1980s to look for information about the Otts and the Ottos. When he walked into the hometown, people wouldn't talk to him. They thought, he's like, what is going on? Why are people being so weird? Because people didn't even want to talk to him. And then they found out he was American. They thought at first he was German. And that's why they wouldn't talk to him. They still hated Germans. But once they found out he was American, then they did take him around and show him, and they were very friendly. But they said everything had been destroyed. There was nothing there. So it's getting to be, there's more societies, and there's more information, and there's more websites. And I handed out the sheet. You can go to these websites. Talks a lot about Pomerania. Talks about the counties, how the counties, started, who lived there. And now there's getting to even be, there's 5 million birth and marriage and death records, which when I first started looking, there was nothing. You couldn't even find the names of the towns. But now you can go to this website. If you want to click on that, Mary Kay, that Myers is right here. Click on that and open it up. I think it might be open already.
Right there? I have to put my glasses on. Right there?
There should be a Myers Gazetteer up there somewhere. You see it on
Myers,
that?
right there.
Where it says Jacob Store. Go over to Jacob Store.
Jacob Store?
Go over to the red road. Click on that. So then escape out. Let me go. Sorry.
We didn't practice this part.
We didn't practice this part. I didn't want to show you the. Okay. So you can go to this Myers Gazetteer, which is really great now. It does all the towns of Prussia. And just type Jacobsdorf right there. And hit enter.
Oh, you want me to do it?
You got your glasses. I don't have my
I
glasses.
got my glasses on.
You got your glasses on? Yeah. You go there and type Jacobsdorf. The roll-offs knew they were from Jacobsdorf. But where is Jacobsdorf? It's just like Jakob, 1K. And you gotta be really, really okay.
You got it? I have no light. Yeah.
In Germany, there are 6 different Biblendorf.
There's 26.
26 since I've.
Yeah, so, yeah.
And it's Jacob's Village is what it translates to, so.
Jacob's Door.
yeah.
D-O-R-S, don't, yeah, hit enter. So now scroll down. These are all the Jacob stores. There's 26. It'd be like there'd be a Jacob store sub-county, and a Jacob store Juneau County, and a Jacob store Dodge County. How do you find the right Jacob store? Luckily, they said Regenwald. So then you click on the Jacob store there. Aha! And it'll even tell you where it is. This never happened before when I first started doing it. It'll show you where it is in Poland now. This is the line right here of Poland. Now click on that red dot. Aha! It even goes to where it is. And you see, it is a tiny little spot. And you go down and click on that spot and you can make it go in, you have to go in some more. And bring it down a little bit. Down to where Jacob starts, down to the bottom there. And click right there. That town doesn't exist anymore, there's just a barn there.
That's the barn that was.
Yeah, that's the barn. See, there's nothing. There's no town, nothing. So that's the problem. A lot of these towns don't exist. They were just a crossroads, or they were an estate, and there's nothing there. But this can really help you figure that out if you know the county. Lots of these families are from this area. Rogo, Lavis, a lot of these towns our families are from. So then go back up to this one right here and click on that and then fit. So those are the sources, and you can.
Oh,
You don't want to see this.
I have nothing to do with that.
You can, like I said, here's the Wonewoc Public Library. They have great obituaries to go on. There is a society in Wisconsin that is in a town that is pure Pomeranian, and they have their own, I think it's this one here, in Freestadt, Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin. All Pomeranian, and they have so much information. You go to their website. You can even see who was living in those towns before the Russians came in. Because they have some of those records. I just gave Dorothy one about that from the Damascus. There were still 39 or 78 Damascus living in that area before World War II ended. So, lots of information. Like I said, when we first started doing this, there was almost no information out there. It was just like the country never existed. So, go on to the next one. There's and that's on your sheet. If you have questions about your family, I did put together, I'm trying to figure out the town for every Pomeranian family in the Wonewoc area. I did it for the Bohemians in Hillsborough, Richmond Center. 500 families we found. Luckily, we could find all the birth records because they're still in Czechoslovakia. But unfortunately, that's not the case for Pomerania. You get over there, and it's so hard to know. Like, you probably figure all those Damascus families are related, but because there's no records, it's really hard to know how they are. So then go to the next slide. Dorothy Damascus Boxhorn is here, and she's been working on this probably as long as I have. Daryl is back here. He's been working on the Wonewoc history. He's been so helpful. I have some books out there, back there, that people wrote about family histories. There's the Piskies, there's the Degners, there's the Race family. You can look through those. Those are in the library here too. I'm going to have Dorothy say a few words about her trip. You've been to Pomerania twice?
5 times.
5? And I was like, I can't even get there once. You've been there 5 times. But if you'd like to come up and say a few words about your trip.
somebody flip one of the lights on?
Sure, yeah, we can turn the lights
Thank
on.
you, perfect.
Thank you so much, this has been great. Just real quick, raise your hands. Who knows for sure they're related to Richard?
think so.
Yeah, I know several of you are, I may not know. Richard and I are second cousins. So if you're related to me, you're related to Richard. Am I talking? A couple additions to his communication. He said that people, your relative went and people didn't want to talk to him tonight. What they were afraid is you were German coming back to claim the land that they had been given.
Because you were thrown out of your house, right?
When they left the key on the table and the door unlocked, and that was it. They were gone. They hoped they'd be back, but they did not know they would be back. And I talked to a Polish lady, and she'd lived there since she was age 7, and she said everybody was always afraid when somebody strange came, because they thought they were coming to reclaim their house. And the Germans were not nice to the Russians when they invaded Russia. So in some ways, they were giving the Germans payback when they were coming back through. Whether it was right or wrong, I'm not going to say, but it's just in the heat of battle, things happen. You mentioned the Freistaat organization. I'm a member of that. That's how I have been over there that many times. Every other year, they take a group, 25, 30. Of course, you have to pay for it. You have to sign up. But there are 2 days, you can sign up one or the other, or both, that you can hook up with a local guide and translator, and they can take you to your local villages if you already know where you're going. I have researched all 8 of my lines that came from Germany, 4 from my family and 4 from my husband's family, and every single one of them I found here. You can't say, well, I'm going to go to Germany and find my people. You're wasting your time. You have to know where you're going before you go over. That's my advice. Richard, there's my information if you want to contact me. The Freistaat organization is taking a group in 26. I don't know if they have more openings or not. You can go to their website, it's on the list here, and find out if there are still openings. I know of another group that's going not quite to our area of Pomerania, but pretty close, that is also going in 26. I can give you that information if you're interested. If you're not, or if you have other things you want to talk about, we're always willing to talk to you.
We're a little crazy.
It gets a little weird, yeah. But anyway, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it. And Richard, thank you for sharing.
And Richard, you wanted to take questions,
And we
right?
have questions now too. If people have questions for me or for Dorothy about her trip, what did you think the area? Think the area looked a lot like Wisconsin, or was it kind of flat and sandy? Is what I heard.
It is very sandy, very, very sandy. The
So is
fields in there are
Wonewoc.
very sandy. That's why the Pomeranians raised rye, potatoes, various things that could survive drought better than like alfalfa or something like that, because they did not have irrigation. You did. And another thing is they had the potato famine in that area somewhat also, but if you know your history, they had other avenues to eat, so it wasn't quite as bad as Ireland. Ireland, they basically subsisted on potatoes, the workers. My Damaskis, they were called day laborers. They owned no land. They worked for one of the large farms. And when you've got 8 kids to raise, you work hard so you don't lose your job. My roll-off, Peter Roll-off, was actually a sheep herder, I found out. So, it's a variety of jobs. He probably also worked for a large farm too, but they said sheep herder. So it's very interesting. And
Tell about the Lutheran church, Dorothy, you was to. The Lutheran church you was to, you sent a calendar from?
oh, Well, that's actually from a different family line, that's from Thuringa. But I went and visited the church and cousins in that community, and she recorded the Christmas Eve children's pageant and sent it to me, which I really appreciated. But again, like you said, what were the Lutheran churches switched over to Catholic. And I don't know, I said, did they have a special, anointing or something of the building? And he said, no, just the next Sunday it's Catholic. I said, okay.
Yeah, my sister-in-law, her mother fled from there, and she told the story. They were in a wagon for 6 months trying to find a place to go.
Oh my.
They were from a little further south, but still, the mother and the daughters went in one wagon, one way, and the father and the sons went in a different wagon, a different way, and then they met up in Western Germany. But they luckily survived, but unfortunately, a lot of people died of starvation. Because it was the middle of winter and they could just take what they could carry.
You think of the amount of kids that they were bringing over.
Right,
And some of them pregnant.
pregnant elderly parents.
Yeah.
The Russians emptied the hospitals, put the people in the hospitals on freight cars, and sent them west. When they opened up the freight cars, there was nobody alive. So it was genocide, basically. But what the Germans did to the Russians and the Poles was pretty awful, too. Yeah.
The Russians did want land, but in reality, the Poles where Ukraine and that was, they wanted the Germans gone, they wanted the Poles to move where the Germans were, so the Ukrainians could move where the Poles used to be, where the Russians could have land. That's the whole, or one of the big reasons.
I think there was a question. Back first, and then...
Going back to the 1870s, when most of our ancestors left.
Right.
Is it be fair to say that that was sort of the tail end of the feudal lord system, and there was sort of the feudal lords owned the land, and our ancestors, the sheepherders, mine and Cold were sheepherders too, that they were more indentured servants,
right.
Borderline slaves?
Germany unified then, and so it became one country, and it was more mixed. It was not, the Pomeranians had kind of almost a different religion, a stricter religion. I think a lot of them were afraid that they would lose their religion, and they heard there was religious freedom here. Also, they wanted land. But it seemed to be around that time when Prussia took over, Hanover, a lot of the Hanoverians came to Wonewoc in the 1860s. And then when Germany unified in 1871, it seemed a lot of people came here too. So I can never figure out when the first person came here. I think some of the Middlesteads came in the 1860s. But a lot of the families came in the 1870s.
Could it be one or two families came, got established, then wrote letters back and said, up here,
Right.
we'll set you up, or we'll give you a place to start out, or,
Right. There was a history of Wisconsin written. Somebody from Wonewoc sent $1,100 over there in 1870-something to bring people over to Wonewoc. I don't know who it was, but that was a lot of money in the 1870s. And that probably brought a lot of that. That might have been why that big group came. But you had a question over here too. Hi.
When you were talking about the Germans and the Russians, there's a lot of different things that happened between World War I and World War II.
Right.
So
Even before that.
yeah, so it would be helpful if you're telling which time period the Germans were least pissed off at the Russians. Because
Well, the Prussians
All
were
of the above.
Yeah, the Prussians took over a lot of land. They took over Poland. They took over lots of Germany. The Prussians really became a big power, and then that combined into Germany. But they were not nice to each other over there, and a lot of those. I mean, parts of Czechoslovakia were German too. Those people had to flee.
I'm kind of an outsider here, but this lady next to me asked if I knew anybody, and I live in Baraboo now. I grew up by Loganville,
Uh-huh.
but my great grandfather lived here
Oh, okay.
He was a Mueller or Miller, we said.
Okay, they might be Hanover.
They were definitely Hanover.
Right. The
Yeah.
wealthy.
Well,
That's okay.
I guess it was, but now it's not.
Yeah.
But, so my great-grandfather was killed on the railroad track here. He was hauling milk, and he got hit by the train.
Wow.
And his son, my grandfather, who I never met, who died when my mother was 13, became a pharmacist in Reedsburg, Frank Miller.
Okay.
And he became a state assemblyman. And he had a couple of patents for things on bicycles. But like I say, he died when my mother was 13. So I should look in the records and see if I can find my great-grandfather, and I don't even know his first name, but it's probably here.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people have connections to this Wonewoc area. When you go someplace, it's like, oh, my grandmother was from Wonewoc, or my great-grandmother was from Wonewoc. It's Baltic Sea, very famous person from Wonewoc. So people kind of you go, oh, I'm from Wonewoc or Wonewoc. It depends on how you say it. If you're from here, I think you say Wonewoc. If you're not from here, you say Wonewoc. So how many people here can think they can trace themselves to Pomerania? Pretty, quite a few, yeah, quite a few. And it's, amazing how quickly the Pomeranians, some of them intermarried with other groups. But Big Creek area, Summit area, they kind of were much more insular. But
That perfection, why look?
thank you. Are there other questions?
I just have something to add. When you were talking about how, like online years ago, there wasn't as much information available as there is today.
Right.
The same thing with cemeteries. My husband and I, when I started genealogy 15, 20 years ago, we walked numerous cemeteries in the sweltering heat, middle of the summer, in Illinois and Wisconsin, all over. And like now you can go online and a lot of them, because somebody took the time
Right.
to sit down and write down every person in a cemetery. Like we did one in Bloomington, Illinois for my family, and they have all flat headstones. It's a huge cemetery with mausoleums and whatever, but all of their stones are in the ground flat. So you literally have to walk it and look at every
And it
single
can be
stone.
so
It's not
hard to-
upright. Yes.
In Watertown, New York, I looked for a whole half a day.
Yeah.
And I knew that his tombstone was there, but I never could find it. So,
Yeah.
and that's why you should go to these places prepared.
Yes.
You can talk to somebody who knows the cemetery. The other problem is that as people get further away from their origins, things change. The stories change. The dates change.
Yeah.
I had
The
one
spellings.
family, 7 children, on their death certificates of the 7 kids, they all had a different last name for their mother. And only one was kind of close. I mean, some were like, where did they find that name? It wasn't even close. And then I have cousins who swear that Braunschweig is their last name, and I'm like, she's from Czechoslovakia. Her name is not Braunschweig. But they swear her name is Braunschweig, and because it was on their grandfather's death certificate. But I have her birth certificate. If you don't have the birth certificate, or even sometimes marriage records, when people die, I don't know if my brother could remember my mother's fake name. So it's really, the further you get away from it, and that's the problem with these records being gone, is we have towns that, oh, it sounds like this.
Right.
And then you see there's 26 Jacob stores. And
Right.
it's like, it makes it really hard.
When you think of the errors that happen in, like, online and, with the electronics nowadays,
Right.
think about a pencil. Because that's what they were using, a pencil and paper back then.
Right. And they didn't speak English, and some of them didn't read or write.
Right.
And then you see people who type in Juneau, like Juneau, Wisconsin, all of a sudden in their history it's Juneau, Alaska. Their mother was born in Juneau, Alaska. And it's like, I don't think she was born in Juneau,
We were
Alaska.
connected.
But it's that artificial intelligence trying to think for you.
Right.
So that's the first, it's just like that Cochinzelle, Palmer Cochinzelle. I would say almost every genealogy I looked at has that name in there, and that's not correct. If you start looking at all these, I don't know if you found that too. Yeah, they just all want it to be the first name that comes up, right?
Family Search, I don't know if you've seen that Family Search, if you've seen that advertised, it's the Latter-day Saints. In some ways, it's wonderful, in other ways, it's so bad. Because people just collect relatives. And you have to be very careful, they'll lead you right down a rabbit hole sometimes. And sometimes there's good information, you have to learn to pick through it and pick out the good stuff.
Because somebody will find a Demoski who lives in northern Illinois, and they're like, oh, those are my Demoskis, and they put it in their family,
And then
and it's not even the. I was supposed to turn that on.
I wanted to yell at someone. I have to yell at Richard.
Why did the grandparents say they were German? Because they spoke the Low German? I never heard of Pomeranian until.
Right. It kind of shifted. You know, it's like, we're Pomerania. Well, then we're Prussia. And then in 1871, it all became Germany. So technically, they were German because they spoke German, a different type of German. But they hadn't lived in Germany since 1200s, you know. They had lived. So it just is easier to say Germany. Pomerania is like, it's a dog, you know. It's not a country.
Our cousin researched, he traced it back to 1632 that our family came from that Pomeranian area.
Right. And so that's pretty hard to do because so many of those records are gone. I mean, you can start, people are putting histories out of their towns now. I don't know if you've seen those lately, about them fleeing. One family, they went to the church and they put the church records in a canvas or wax bag and they buried it in the churchyard before they left. And somebody went back in the 1990s and dug that up. So people, just the records are so spotty. This one town, Bulko, where my family's from, they said, we haven't seen the records, the church records, since April 15th, 1945. They're gone.
Now, I have heard that in some communities, when the minister left, he would put the records under his arm and take them with him. And he would leave them somewhere where he thought they would be safe, and they are still finding them underneath the bed someplace.
Right. They're still finding records that, but it's your family is very lucky that they were able to trace it back that far.
Yeah.
Because our families are
No.
Yes.
You know, it was the same thing with expensive paintings they had in Germany.
Yeah.
They took them off the wall and they took them to caves and hid them in places like that where they hoped they'd never be found by somebody. And you know what I always thought, if you ever been out to Washington, D.C. to the Vietnam Memorial, they've got a place out there, if you're looking for a person that was killed in Vietnam, they've got a book there. And they'll show what tablet and what line, and you can go right there.
Go right to the spot.
And they give you papers out there and a crayon. You can actually bring the name out and bring it home with you.
Yeah, so some of the families that I cannot find, the towns for are Radke's, the Millers, and I know there's a lot of Millers, but there's a Pomeranian Miller family. I cannot find anything where they're from the Radke's. There's several different families, but I heard that the church records were destroyed during the flood in Laval. But you told me that, and I heard yesterday that the minister did save some of the pages and gave them to some of the families. I just heard that this last week. So like the Treptow, he took the Treptow page and gave it to the Treptow. I have the Krieger pages. You have the Demoski and Roloff pages.
From the destroyed book?
From the destroyed book.
I have not heard that.
That's what
Mine,
Debbie Price just told me. That
I
Debbie Price checked.
communicated with the minister in '03, and he sent me what I had shared with you,
Right.
and he said, "Come, there's so much more." And I planned, and finally in 2010, I said, "I'm coming," and he said, "There's nothing here." It was on a shelf at Zion, Lutheran Church. And they said if it would have been in one shelf higher, it would have been safe.
Yep.
But, you know, that's the way it goes.
There's quite a few people saying great program, Richard, but then Juanita Kohlhoff
Yep.
said, I'm from Colorado, but have the Wonewoc Ray family records and very interested. Thank you for your program. So I just wanted to let
She
you know.
has the records. Have
For-
her share.
She has the records for the Rays.
I don't care any
Yeah,
records.
right.
On the, that wedding with the looks,
Uh-huh.
that Peter and Christine, that was the son,
Mhm.
I lived next door to them my whole, as I was being a child.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Done any pictures?
I might have.
Hunt.
The problem is people are not really good about writing names on pictures and stuff. That is
Yeah.
really frustrating. And so many times they just have them with this and they just throw them away.
Yeah,
If you don't have the names,
yeah.
But I went to the Baltic family, my grandma was Baltic. I went to a family reunion in Sauk City where the average age was like 96. I took my pile of my grandma's pictures and they were like, I don't know who that woman is, but that's my grandma. I said, well, that's my grandma. I'm standing next to your grandma. So you can sometimes figure out who the people are. So don't throw them away. Yes.
I know there's like a
Hanover, Germany, right.
the Stronkins came from over there,
Right.
or Oakson or something.
Yes.
See a cover of
Yeah, a lot of the Hanoverians came from that town, or that area right there.
my grandma came from there.
Right.
She was a Stronkin.
And I'm gonna have Cheryl Thornton talk about them because she's a Hanoverian. I am not descended from any of the Hanoverians. Lots of my family's married into the Hanoverians, but I am not descended from any of the Hanoverians.
the township of Laval, you talked about family, it's called chain migration. That's the
Right.
official name for it. Over a 20-year period, 30-plus families came and settled from where you were talking to the Laval area. Yeah.
Some, even in 1903, the Wolves came, and you see on their ship records, Goat League Helpup is the one who sponsored them to come. 1903, that's pretty late, but most, I would say, 1870s, 1880s.
And they had to get permission to leave.
They had, right, the Tsar, or the
You couldn't just
King of
pack up
Prussia
and
had to give them permission to leave.
They had to check with the local police authorities to make sure they had all the bills paid and, you know, anything like that. Plus, people knew they were leaving, so they had to sell their tables and chairs, whatever little bit they had. Well, relatives would probably take pity on them, but others, they got you cornered. They'll, you know, might take advantage of you because you're leaving, so who knows?
So our families were very lucky they decided to make that move because
Yeah.
it was pretty
Those that
awful over
stayed.
there after they left.
And the very well-to-do did not leave, because why?
Right.
And the very poor could not leave because they just couldn't afford it. So it was the middle-ish
Right.
group. Yeah.
So I've talked to people and they said stories about being on the ship, but I have never heard anyone who said, this is why we decided to leave. I mean, it's probably, but
It was a push and pull.
it was it's like, do we go, don't we go, do we go?
Yeah.
We got a cousin over there who says it's like the land of milk and honey, we're
We're going.
and they send them $50 to come over, you know? So,
My grandma, when she came over, she was only 4 months old, and her mother told her that when they left Germany, their mother cried because she knew she'd never see them.
right.
Great work.
Yes, you have a,
Yeah, you mentioned the Summit Evangelical Church. That's up on that Bliss Ridge up there. The cemetery is there. Was the church right there too?
I think, Jim, where was the church at Summit?
Right behind the cemetery.
Right behind the cemetery. How long has the church been gone?
Since 1920.
And what happened? Did it burn or?
No, they just tore it down.
Now, the Big Creek Church,
What happened?
you can see on I'm not sure what the name of that road is. It drives right by the Big Creek Church. The Big Creek Cemetery You have to go off a side road,
Yeah.
and that's where the original church was standing,
Oh, okay.
right next
Where that
to
white
it.
church was. They hauled that wood for that church from the sea all the way up.
For the old.
For the original.
And the original church is now a car garage just down the road.
So Jim put together this book. It's a great book. I'm gonna donate it to the library, but so many of us are related to the Race family, by intermarriage. And so I'm gonna give this book to the library. It'll be for you to have.
I wonder, hey, everybody, there'll be lots of time to talk after, but it's getting really chattery, and I know, especially online, no
Okay,
one's going to
we'll
be able to
come off
hear.
that. Sure.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Stop that. And I'll turn this off.
Oh, no.
No?
I'm saying
Okay.
keep going, but people won't be able to hear you online because there's a lot of people talking.
Okay, all right.
If we could just keep that down.
All right. And there's, like I said, there's my email. People can contact me. Especially, we're going to have some arguments about the towns our families are from because, as you see, there's 26 Jacobsdorfs. Some people pick the first one, and it's in Bavaria. And it's like, our family is not from Bavaria. They would not be happy to know that they were told that they were from Bavaria. It's like a totally different country. So.
And you can't get thrown off by a name such as Kruger. Some have an E, some don't. Yes, it's possible that they are related. Say, oh no, they can't be related because they have an E. No, they can be. Damaski, I know of 7 different spellings. So, and in one of my other family lines, Wolf is written 3 different ways on one document. It wasn't so critical in that time period. Like you say, people just weren't that educated, even though the people writing it were probably a minister or a mayor or something official. But still, they kind of winged it.
Yes.
So we have another comment. It's Cheryl Schwarzenbart.
Yes.
And she's
Hanover.
yes, and yes, and she said if someone wants to contact me regarding Hanover, please contact Cheryl. And this is her email if people want to jot it down. Family ties, so family TIES 2, the numeral, at mac.com, mac.com.
And she's done tons of service. And the good thing about the people from Hanover is most of those records are still in German. So if you get over there, you can probably go back to the 1400s. So, yes.
Is the race book available to purchase somewhere, or is
I
that?
think that's the last copy. I have the last copy, and I'm giving it to the library.
Okay.
So, I don't know how many you printed, Jim.
I don't know,
Quite a, yeah.
40 or 50.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it'll be available at the library.
Okay.
And it's mostly pictures, some stories, but a lot, it's wonderful pictures.
Okay.
There's also a book back here, the Degner book, done by Bashi. Sarah Bashi. She spent years working on that. And Degner's is another huge family.
From Hanover?
They're from Pomerania. They're from what town is it again? I've got it in my list. Nagar, yeah. So it's kind of it's not too far from Regenwald. So like I said, they're all pretty much from that little tiny, like 50-mile radius. Almost every family's from there. And they probably were, they've been there since the 1200s. So they were probably all related to each other even before they came over. But we can't prove that anymore. Ish. And then there's the Dagger book is in the, I don't know if there's a fifth book. I thought she wrote a fifth book too, but I can't find it. I can't find the fifth book. I have some pages from it, but, and then there's, the Piski book is back there. That's the same. They spell Piski 7 different ways. And Piski sounds Polish to me, but so does Sasinski, and so does Polensky. But all of those people, those families are from that same area. So unfortunately, the Sasinski's marriage records just say Pruben, which is German for Prussia. So it's pretty hard to figure out where they're from. So
Well,
it's just,
genetically, have you done
yes,
You're part Polish.
part Polish, part Russian, yeah, right.
And
So,
I'm part Polish, part German.
right.
So
So yeah,
you're
it's
right at that cusp.
right.
And they did like like each other once in a while.
When they weren't killing each other. Yeah, you're from Hanover,
Yeah.
but no Pomeranian. No.
That's okay.
Technically, still, all of our relatives married you already. Any other questions? Questions about your family, about your town?
It says Redlow, Poland is now the location of that.
Of where the Dagners are from?
Yeah.
Right, right,
And that's REDLW?
Yeah.
right. I do have, if you want to look at this, I started my project of all the families, the towns they're from, and it might not always be right, because it's hard to know how they spell those towns. But if you want to look in here at some of your families, I don't have everybody, but I'm starting. We did all the Bohemians, and that was really difficult, because people of the same thing, they didn't say the towns they were from. They just said they were from Bohemia.
If anybody's interested, Richard gave this, it's about our roll-off Damaski family reunion, and we have it at the LaValle Park. But it also has my email address. If you want my email address, you can have it or not, I don't care. He's the one who knows.
And it's a roll-off in Demansky?
Roll-off Damaski. Yeah. But probably all of you go through your company.
You got one?
I'm part of that.
You're part of that family?
Yeah.
There is, the other thing that I just found is, on this one website in 1939, Schiefelbein and Bellegarde, which is kind of the area we're all from, they listed the names of every person that was in the census in 1939 before they were
Right before the war.
right before the war, and I think there were 78 Damaskis left in that area. Unfortunately, there were 560 Kriegers, but those people all fled, so you don't even know where they ended up.
And if there aren't enough flyers to go around, if you just take a picture of it and pass it on, that works too.
Or I can run off more upstairs after too.
Yes.
Whichever.
I keep hearing you talk about storing things at the library. Does Juneau County have a historical society?
They do at the Borman House, and I have actually not been there. So
I haven't been there for several years.
I'm just suggesting that pictures and things people don't throw them away. Make sure they get to the historical society.
Right.
I belong to the Sauk County Historical Society, which is extremely active,
mm-hmm.
and we have cemetery tours. We have all kinds of things, and it's very interesting.
Daryl's our historian back
If you get people
He's
involved,
written the history of the town.
Wave, Daryl.
Yeah.
I just want to put in a little plug about the Borman House, because our 4-H club just a few years ago started caroling there, and over Christmas they have just a great season. They invite the kids over and let them carol and stuff. And we always have the kids in the area go through, and you can look through all the different rooms, and there's an area outside, and it is a really nice place to go through and tour, and there's so much for interesting stuff from our area. So if you've not been to the Borman House in Boston, go ahead and check it out, because there's a lot.
It's kind of right across Walgreens, right on the
Yep.
front there. Yeah. Great. Yes, Kim?
Rose Clark will give you a tour if you are interested in a particular thing.
Okay.
He is now.
All right.
My mother works over there sometimes too.
Cool. Kim?
I just wanted to mention, if people do have family photos with information on the back, if you go to the Wonewoc Library website, there's something called the Echo Project, and we scan in those photos and the information we have, as well as who owns it, anything we know. We can even scan the back of the photo. So if you're willing, what's that?
All in one file?
It's all in a database.
The picture.
So
shows
we
up
scan
and then
it.
can go and
You
look
don't
at
scan it, but we scan it. So if anyone is, has that information, is willing to loan it to us, you will get it back in the same condition. It's not giving it to us.
Flash drive you gave me.
Oh, sure.
All the pictures on a flash drive.
Oh, wow. And with the information?
All annotated.
Okay. Yeah,
The
that'd
other
be,
thing is just talk to your older relatives. It's amazing how Aunt Bertha will know one story. Oh, that's right, we are the older ones now. But how every family has a little bit of a difference. They remember a different thing about the family. So it's like, oh yeah, Grandpa came over and he didn't have shoes. And no one else knows that except for that one kid remembered that. Or so every family has some stories and you kind of say what happened. Yes?
When you say Miller, is it spelled M-I-L-L-E-R or
M-I-L-L-E-R. Julius was the, and they were Big Creek. They were Summit, Laval, that area.
M-U-E.
There's Miller Road up by 58.
Yeah.
Those Millers, I'm pretty sure are Pomeranian. Because they all married the Gates.
Gates is notorious for very spelling.
Oh, Gates?
Even among siblings.
Gates. On my great-grandmother's death thing, it's Guth, G-U-T-H-S, and G-U-T-Z, Gates. They all of them changed it to Gates, G-A-T-E-S.
Well, that goes back to World War I.
Right.
They wanted it to not sound so German.
Right.
And that's why they,
That goes further back than that, goes back to the Revolutionary War and the DAR. You always have 16 different spellings of the name.
That's like with his grandma is the one who added the I in Demosky. Yep.
yeah, that,
Right.
right there.
That's
That's his grandma.
They're I-E.
Well, we make it our own once we get here.
Well,
Ellis,
and don't blame them at Ellis Island, because they only
Right.
take what comes off the manifest.
Yeah.
The Burbskis, two brothers spelled it both differently.
Yeah.
One spelled with an E and one without.
Ellis Island, I think, well, years back when I was doing stuff online for genealogy, I'm pretty sure they have a box that you can type in a name, and it will bring up like Damashki, and I mean anything, the
That's
spellings,
close,
the
right. It's
yes,
phonetically.
yes,
like,
and
right.
and you can find out a lot through some of those different spellings
Even
and.
those Damaskis, there's a few Damaskis in that area that spell differently. So, yeah, and the names. Well, the other thing is, World War I and World War II came along. It wasn't cool to be German.
Right.
And so that was a big, and then people went over there and they fought against their cousins, because we were not too far removed from Germany in that area. So it was lots of people ran out and got their naturalization papers because they wanted to prove they were American. Yes.
In 1989, my folks got this Krieger printout of the family reunion held up here in the Legion Park.
Right, Lorna.
Yes, yes. Does anybody else have one of these?
I do have one. I forgot I have that somewhere.
I acquired,
So you were a Krieger?
my grandmother was a Krieger.
Which Krieger?
Oh gosh, don't give me that. That's why I'm here to find out.
I can tell you, I have.
Because Millers married Kriegers.
Right. I have 74,000 people in my genealogy book, so.
And that's how I get it to the Summit Evangelical Church, Big Creek.
So the Kriegers, they helped
Yes.
build the church, right?
Yes.
The Kriegers did.
I suggest you loan it to the library and let her copy it, digitally or however, and she'll get it back to you.
Actually, I have two. Because
Oh, maybe you could donate one to the library.
I will. Because
Thank you.
my parents got one, those three siblings got one, and then their cousin Harriet Demosky got one.
Right.
So I actually have two copies, and then Harriet actually kept up a few more people in hers than what my Aunt Irma did. So
Some of these old
I've been
timers
going
were
back and
really
forth.
good about keeping contact. There was the Krieger reunion, there was the Degner reunion.
Yeah.
I think the only one I know that's still going is the Demosky. But every year we went to the Degner reunion, and they thought I was a Degner because
And
I was
that's
going
how I
to the
found out 85%.
But because my uncle was a Degner. So, but yeah, they were so good about keeping contact with everybody, and it's kind of all
This is from my
faded away.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find out where this Pomeranian
The
from.
usually it's the women are the gatherers.
Right.
And when they pass,
Yeah.
it's hard. Not always, there are good guys like you.
I find it fun and interesting. I bore my nephews and nieces to death.
Well, now that you're retired, you got all that time.
Yes.
I was tracing my family.
I'm Kathy.
It's Montai side.
I recognize you.
It's
Montai.
I recognize you too, but it's my name.
M-A-N-T-H-E-Y.
Pomeranian. Yes, I think Breeders and the Monkeys, Mary Monkeys, right. I think the mix is here. But these families intermarry. True marriage.
I mean, how do you say Montai?
I say Manti.
Yeah, we were told it was Montai.
M-A-N-T-H-E-Y. Yeah, man. Mrs. Braxton was a man. But I can't tell where they're from. I do know where some of the Mantis are from. I've got the towns. But they are all from that same area too. That's right. I can't find
See, I personally think the Mansky and the Namaski, the naming burnished away sometimes.
And how do you say it? Do you say
Montai.
Montai. Wow, because I always say Manti, but yeah.
It looks like a show.
Yeah, it looks like Manti. Several of my family were married. And the original Mrs. Radke was a man.
Well, you sure got a
Lots of
long
people
life
were-
battery in there.
But yeah, they were in my family. Yes.
I'd like to make one more suggestion. All of those of you that go to church, when you have an annual meeting and nobody knows what to talk about, find out where they keep their records. And if they don't have a nice safe to put them in, somebody could donate a gun safe or whatever and put records in it.
Right.
So that you know where they are.
Yeah.
Well, after the bad news about the flood, I went to all my other churches and I digitally copied it. And I have them personally, and I gave a digital copy to the church.
Yeah, wonderful.
But then, of course, you don't need it.
So it's amazing what people have in their houses that are still have come out. Yeah.
Especially if a home has stayed within the family,
Right.
and you haven't done a complete clean out of the family.
Because some of these farms have stayed in the families for years and years and years. But I still can't find the Millers. The Mantleys I'm pretty close to Randy's name. But I've got a whole list. I'm trying to find all 60 of the families where they're from. But you know, and these people moved around. I mean, there could have been 5 towns or places between here and the valley. So, you know, which town were they from? It's like there's so many. They'll have 6 kids and they'll all say we're born in different towns. But they're all within a mile of each other. So maybe the farm was in between the towns, or they might have got baptized at the bigger church. You know, so like Wonewoc is so connected to Laval, it's so connected to Boston, it's so connected to Hillsborough, and it's so connected to Reedsburg. So people's records are kind of all over the place. Yes.
My sister is married to a miller that
Right, okay. Mm-hmm. Do they have some, see, and that's, they're probably the same ranking as Pittsburgh, and the Manti. Manti? Manti. Now I
So, like, when I got.
you have the name where the ranking is. Okay, well, my email is on that sheet. You are too? So, if anybody here is descended from the Millers, then they can figure out where they're from. I would be.
But you're not talking about the Muellers, you're talking about the Millers.
There's like 5 different M-I-L-L-E-R.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 different M-U-E-L-L-E-R. So it's very confusing. And they all say, some say Mueller, some say Miller.
And some say
But
Kruger and some say
I've
Krieger.
not heard of any Mueller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R from Pomerania. But I know there's at least one M-I-L-L-E-R. Because there's a big printer. Two pills. Miller Road. You know, if you was the same.
It will save on Facebook for a couple of months, I believe, but I'm going to try and see if we can get that saved to the website so that link can go on forever. I've got to look into that, but it will be available on Facebook for quite a while.
Pomeranian is Hanover, I'm pretty sure. No, Bern is Pomerania. But I think Brant is, you know, I have to look on my, I think I might have looked up. But for some reason I thought Brant was Hanover, but. Lebanon? For Brant, Lebanon is for Lebanon. Okay, after that, okay. Okay, so then the brands are Pomeranians. Okay. Yeah, so it's amazing how many families. Lindorf is Pomeranian. I have a town called Moss is Pomeranian. I have, did I give you that list So beer miners are from Bavaria, Brockmans are from Pomerania, Dogs are from Pomerania, Devons are from Pomerania, Fix are from Pomerania, Bears are from Pomerania, I guess Brands are from Pomerania, Devonski's Pomerania, Deckers Pomerania, Helpa Pomerania, Gates is Pomerania. These are the ones where I found the town. Hell is from Pomerania, Helpa, Yeps are from Pomerania, Taylors are from Pomerania. Krugers are from Kriegers, from Pomerania. Malones are from Pomerania. Leverances are from Pomerania. Lankies are from Pomerania. Manglos are from Pomerania. Ox are from Pomerania. Middlesteads are from Pomerania. Races are from Pomerania. Hagels, Pisgis, Ottos. Prices are from Pomerania. Schmitz are from Pomerania. Roloffs are from Pomerania. Loopses are from Pomerania. Loops are from Pomerania. Sockies are from Pomerania. Lindorfs are from Pomerania. Lindorfs and Wonewoc.
What about the product?
Many of you have shared that you have a specific name and a specific village that your family has come from. Email it to Richard.
Right, and see if we can compare.
And see if we can blend them together.
And when you look on that map and you start to see the towns around, like the Gates is, he said it was from Liebenfeld, and I done his test certificate, and I looked and looked, and I couldn't. But then I found a town next to him that was Liebenfair or something like that. So it's very close, but it's, if you look at the map, you can start seeing the town names. Oh, yeah, that's it.
Did you say the
I
product?
guess in Germany or Pomerania, do they have townships? Or did everybody connect to a village? For instance, my dad grew up at Loganville, but when I got national, I looked up his birth record and it said town Westwood.
Right.
You know, so is that how it is in Germany?
That's kind of the way it is, because they have the towns, and some of them are just nothing more than a manor house. And then they have the counties with the prices, and then they have the states, and then they have the big Pomeranians. So it's,
And then they changed it.
What I'm trying to say, like, my dad was town Westfield, it's not really a town, but if somebody.
township,
If I-
right.
Even on the record, it does not say township for the town of Westfield. State
So,
of Wisconsin.
and some people might go to Churchill now, and some people might go to Hillsborough, but they kind of are neighbors, and they still go to different churches. I mean, so those records would be in a different spot.
You have to know what year you're talking, because lines can change.
Extras are the not. Does anybody still speak Low German? You speak some Low German?
I don't know about Low German, but I picked up from ancestors, and I had a couple semesters in college, but I think that's probably High German. I know the swear words.
There's a very interesting case. A woman is speaking in Low German, and a woman is speaking in High German, and the words are all different. I don't know how these people communicate. They speak different German, but they really don't speak different.
Yeah.
Ready?
That was closer.
And so I assume the church here in town was High German.
I think you're right.
And the church up at Big Creek was Low German.
But didn't they stop the German services right before World War II?
They
Or was it World War
everything.
World
Yeah.
War One.
World War One. Okay.
World War One, yeah. Some cities still had German until World War II.
And people could remember German.
Well, they had German in Reedsburg. They were German until when I was born in 51.
Yeah.
But I never got to those, but they had them.
Well, some would have like one service German, one
Yes,
service English.
yes.
And then it evolved to maybe like holiday special service in German, and it slowly evolved to just
English.
It varies.
Yeah.
There's a question, maybe just for people who join late, but where is Pomerania today?
Pomerania is mostly Poland. It's up on the Baltic Sea across from Sweden. So it's the flatlands up in northern Poland. It's where the Oder River comes out into the Baltic Sea. A couple parts of it stayed with Germany. Brandenburg and Mecklenburg, part of that Pomerania is still German. And Woland, the island of Woland up in the, is I think split down the middle. And I think the Leverances are from Woland and the Prices are from Woland. Yeah, yeah, but it's still Pomeranian, yeah. And if they look at the tape, you can see the maps. And if they go to the references, there's a really good map of where Pomerania is.
And the Pomeranian dog was a working dog. They were on the ships for killing the rodents that wanted, they were physically larger than the little ankle biters now. But they were the Pomeranian dog, and these dogs are descendants of them. They were actually a working dog in the day.
And I wanted to raise Pomeranian geese because my grandmother was Pomeranian. They were the noisiest thing. I had to
And you had them for Thanksgiving.
No, but they were so noisy. But I'm like, Pomeranian geese, that's what I want. No. Pomeranian dogs.
Okay.
Okay, so you've got my email. If you have questions, I'm glad to see some printers here.
Make sure to save your information and send it to Richard.
Right, because I'm still looking for some of the towns, especially the Radke ones, the Millers, the Montai. Just like I tried to say the town of
Yeah,
Stettin.
but no Millers by Loganville. I'll talk to you.
Stettin. Is that Stettin now? Yeah, and the names are, the German names and the Polish names, lots of them are not even Polish. But they are referencing them now, and they used to. You just could never find them. Yeah. I kind of like to do a map, a big map, and put a star and then say the Jonathan, prices over here, but Ryan, or not the Ryan. The Bosque, these people are in this area, so people can kind of see, because we did that with the check families. Listed every town, it's like, this town, these 10 families are from this town, these 10 families. But hopefully we do that with Pomerania.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Richard. This is awesome.